Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Ask Steph. I'm Stephanie Lillian, and every week I answer your yoga and meditation questions. The question for this week is, how do I do a forward fold? So today's answer is going to be a little bit more of a tutorial. We're going to go over the basics of how to properly get into a forward fold. So forward folds can be one of two things. It could be a standing forward fold where you simply bend from the hips, or seated forward fold where your legs are extended and you simply reach forward that way. So we're going to go over the basic alignment points today so you can find your way into a forward fold. Before we jump in though, I'm going to give you a little note of caution. So there's one very big myth that revolves around forward folds that a lot of students abide by, and the myth is this. So essentially, if you're doing a forward fold standing, the myth is the goal is to reach the floor. Myth B, part B, is if you're in a seated forward fold, people believe that the goal is to touch your toes, and that's the point of the posture. However, I am here to tell you today that the goal of the posture is not to touch the ground or to touch your toes. As with any yoga posture, the goal is simply to work a specific area in the body, either to become more flexible, to gain balance, to get a little bit stronger. So never the goal is to gain a physical outcome, if you will. So let's jump right in. If you'd like to join me, I like to invite you to join me and feel this in your body. So the first thing, let's start with a standing forward fold. Generally feet hips distance, all 10 toes point forward. Inhale, reach the crown of the head up towards the ceiling, and as you exhale, you begin to hinge from the hips, so back is nice and long. Now notice, move very slowly. As you're hinging, you're going to begin to feel opening along the backs of the legs. So pause when you just feel a general opening. Hands can rest on the thighs. This, my friend, is a perfect first step for a forward fold. Now, depending on whether you're going for a stretch on the backs of the legs or the low back, you're going to do one of two things. If you're going for more of a stretch along the low back, you're going to keep bending the knees and lowering the chest towards the ground, maybe eventually even resting the torso on the thighs. So you're going to really add a significant bend to the knees and go to where you feel just a nice stretch in the back body. Now, if you're going for more of a stretch along the backs of the legs, that's when you're going to begin to straighten the legs. The goal here is, again, not to reach the floor, but to find the stretch that you're looking for in the body. We're moving with a nice long back body and just playing around with the bends in the knees until we find a stretch that works for us. Same thing with sitting down on the mat. So if you want to join me and sit down, if you're going for a stretch on the backs of the legs, your legs are generally going to be straight, knees pressing down and toes pulling back towards you. On an inhale, you sit up nice and tall, crown of the head reaches up, and then on an exhale, again, hinge from the hips and just walk those hands forward enough until you feel that nice stretch on the backs of the legs. Legs are active as you press them down and pull the toes back towards you. Now, if you are going for a bit of a stretch on the low to mid back, you'll bend the knees, placing the heels on the ground, flexing the toes back towards you, and then begin to, yet again with a nice long back, just begin to draw the heart center forward. Keeping the feet active, pulling the toes towards you, you'll feel a nice release on the back body. And maybe the bend of the knees won't be too much, but at some point you'll feel a nice release along the back. So again, notice here that I'm not reaching. Look at the very different alignment from reaching for toes versus drawing heart forward, keeping the back nice and long. Over time, you will develop the flexibility and the strength to pull yourself forward and open up the backs of the legs and low back. Think of this more as drawing your rib cage towards the thighs rather than fingertips towards the toes. You should only feel the stretch in the mid to low back and on the backs of the legs. Once you feel tension and rounding in the upper back, whether you're standing or seated, you know you've gone too far. We're really focusing on keeping the back nice and long, chest shining forward, and then hinging from the hips from there. So that's all for the forward fold. I'd like to invite you to give it a try and really try to let go of the thought that we're striving towards a physical goal or outcome of reaching the ground or reaching the toes, but instead we're finding length and space in the body, using the core to draw us forward and either going for a nice stretch on the backs of the legs or adding a bend to the knees and going for a nice opening on the mid to low back. So I hope this helps you in your forward fold journey. Let me know if you have any other questions around forward folds or anything else for that matter. I always enjoy answering your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in here today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Namaste.